All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the deer hunting regulations webinar. Tonight, we are going to be joined by our deer biologist, Dr. Joe Caudell, who is an expert in all things deer hunting and deer hunting regulations wise. So tonight, we're going to be covering some recent regulation changes that have happened for our deer season and answering as many questions as we can. So before I turn things over to Joe, I just have a couple of quick housekeeping things. My name is Mariah. I'm an outreach specialist with the Division of Fish and Wildlife. And my colleague Alexandra is also on here helping with some behind the scenes stuff. Thanks so much, Alexandra. She's also an outreach specialist. And then, like I mentioned, Dr. Joe Caudell is our deer biologist. He's our content expert for the evening. This platform might look a little bit different for folks if nobody has used Teams Live before. So just a couple of things on how that works. With Teams Live, we cannot hear or see anybody who's in the audience, but we do have a Q&A function that we hope everyone will take advantage of. You should see that on your toolbar, and you'll be able to type in any questions that come to you while we're discussing things tonight about deer regulations, and we will get to as many of those questions as we possibly can. And then if there are questions we can't get to, we will be providing a link for you to be able to reach out to different experts at the Division of Fish and Wildlife to get those questions answered. So like I mentioned, we'll get to as many of those as we possibly can. If you prefer to have closed captions turned on during something that's like auditory, you can turn those on in the settings. So feel free to do that as well if that would be beneficial for you. And then just as a reminder, a recording of this presentation will be taken and then placed on YouTube within the next couple of weeks. So if you have questions about anything that we talked about tonight, but you might be able to get a refresher on, or if you want to send it to anybody who wasn't able to make it tonight, it will live on the DNR YouTube channel. So that'll be probably within the next couple of weeks. But just as a reminder, we won't be able to see or hear any of y'all on that recording. So no worries there. So like I mentioned, please use that Q&A. We'll get to as many of the questions that we possibly can. If we don't get to your question and it's about deer regulations, please email that deer info line, which I'm going to post in the chat. And then if it's about buying a license or another topic, please use our Contact Us page to find the best person to answer your question. So if you do reach out to the wrong person, we will find that answer for you. But that way we can just get your answers a little bit more quickly. And I'm going to be posting all of those resources in the Q&A announcements. We do know there are probably going to be a lot of people on this call tonight because there are a lot of folks who care a lot about deer hunting and want to know about the new regulation changes, which is awesome. That's what we're here for. So our goal with this webinar is to learn from Joe about all of these new changes and answer as many questions as we can. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Dr. Caudell, who's our expert. And yeah, take it away, Joe.
All right. Thanks, Mariah. What we're going to be doing tonight, like Mariah said, is looking at our changes to the deer regulations. I've been the state deer biologist for about 9 years and have been a wildlife biologist in various capacities for about 25. So, but before we get into that very much, what we want to do is thank our, what you could call our sponsor of this program here tonight, which is basically the hunting license that you buy and the Pittman-Robertson Act that matches those funds from your hunting license. And, deer, like all wildlife, need great habitat to thrive. Conservation work that promotes healthy deer populations and their habitat is funded through the sale of hunting and trapping license and excise taxes collected for firearms and ammunition sales and other hunting equipment. These taxes are distributed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service back to each state, where they are matched with the funds provided by hunters through the purchase of hunting license. So thank you guys for doing that, and we'll get right into it. When we started going down this route, the primary goal for even looking to change the deer hunting regulations was to really simplify rules for hunters. We have a very complex set of regulations. We went through, we identified ones that we thought we could simplify. We reached out to you guys, hunters, and asked what y'all thought about these. Some made the cut, others didn't. And these are the ones that have made it through that entire process and will now be in effect for this upcoming hunting season. So something that's new to Indiana is actually having a statewide antlerless bag limit. And that bag limit for us this first time around will be 6. And this was a very popular change. A lot of hunters like the idea of this. Before, if somebody asked the question of, well, how many antlerless deer can I harvest? It was actually a pretty complicated answer. And we had to look at all the different bag limits for different license types and a lot of different things. Now, hopefully it's much simpler that the number you can harvest is 6 antlerless deer on the regular hunting license. Now, if you're at a state park hunt or a military hunt or hunting on military base with their special hunts or using the deer reduction zones, you can still harvest additional antlerless deer. But if you're hunting on muzzleloader licenses and archery license and the firearm, well, not the firearm because the firearm is buck only, but the bundle license, with all those combined, the multi-season antlerless license, you can harvest up to 6 antlerless deer per hunter. Now, you don't have to, that's your choice. Now, along with that, we also switched to having a county antlerless bag limit. Before, we had the bonus antlerless system, and that bonus was on top of the number of deer that you could harvest with archery license and muzzleloader license. And that was really confusing. The bag limits were confusing to folks. A lot of folks didn't even know that was out there. And so we switched over to just a single number to show you the number of deer that can be harvested within a county. So if you're thinking about that 6 antlerless deer for the entire state, what this might mean is if you are hunting in, let's say, DeKalb County this year, maybe you're from DeKalb County, and your county antlerless bag limit is 3. You can't go over that 3 in that county, but to get that 6, maybe you go to the neighboring county, maybe you go to Noble County and harvest another 3, so then you're at your 6. So it's important to remember that overall antlerless bag limit of 6, and then your county antlerless bag limit. We still have the single buck bag limit for the entire state, so you keep that in mind. Along with this, we got rid of the individual bag limits for archery and muzzleloader. And some of you may not even realize this. Archery, there was a bag limit of 2, so you couldn't harvest any more than 2 deer using archery license or 1 deer on a muzzleloader license. A lot of folks wanted to be able to harvest more with archery or more with muzzleloaders. And so we got rid of those limits to try to avoid some of that confusion. And so now if, for instance, somebody wanted to harvest 6 antlerless deer would just want to buy 6 archery license, they can do that. And they can, if they want to harvest their buck on an archery license, that would be their 7th deer. So, they can do that. No need to switch back and forth with different license types if you don't want to. Most folks don't do that, but we got rid of that because some folks would misunderstand, harvest too many deer on archery license because of the confusion with the bonus system. So just know that we've gotten rid of that. Along with changing the bonus system, the license type that you would use in that bonus system was called a bonus antlerless license. Well, since that system is gone, we had to change basically the terminology of that. So now we have something called a multi-season antlerless license that has replaced that bonus license. It still functions pretty much the same. You can use it in archery season, firearm season. So this is how you can harvest a doe with a firearm. You have to use the multi-season antlerless license because the actual firearms license is buck only. The archery and muzzleloader license are either sex. Our firearms license is buck only, so you have to use a multi-season antlerless license to be able to harvest an antlerless deer. Okay, so you've got that. Can be used in any of those seasons. So for instance, if you were to buy one in archery season and maybe you're unsuccessful, you can then use that same license in firearm season and then back to archery and then on the muzzleloader after that. So something, again, associated with that bonus antlerless system is previously you couldn't use a bonus antlerless license on a fish and wildlife property. Now we've tweaked that language to say that you cannot harvest a doe or an antlerless deer on fish and wildlife properties with a firearm. And so some of you hunt fish and wildlife properties, and maybe some of those like Atterbury Fish and Wildlife area. If you don't know if the area you're hunting on is one of these places you cannot harvest a doe, if you go to this website, on.in.gov/deer-quota, that has the list of all the properties where you cannot harvest a doe on a fish and wildlife property. It's also got our list of the county bag limits in that map form that you saw before. So this is a good site to know if you want to double check that. Something else that's new is that now the crossbow equipment can be used with the archery licenses. Prior, you had to have a separate crossbow license and a separate archery license to use a vertical bow. Now that's been combined, so you only need a single license to use crossbow equipment or vertical bows. Okay. Another change that happened, actually, this went ahead and went into effect last year, but we had a change to the bundle license. Previously, you could harvest a buck and 2 does or 3 does. Looking at how that license was being used, most hunters only, like 90-something% of hunters harvested a buck and 2 does. Very few harvested 3 does on that. We would get a lot of confusion over like how to use this license and what that meant. So we changed it to where you could harvest a buck and 2 does on that. Some of you remember the late antlerless firearm season. We haven't had that for a while, primarily because it was tied to the bonus antlerless system. And it had to have a bonus antlerless quota of 4 or more. And most of our counties haven't had a quota of 4 or 8 in a pretty good while. So that season hadn't been used in several years. Because it was tied to the bonus system, we were going to have to change it anyway. So we looked at it, we asked hunters. In the end, a decision was made just to go ahead and remove that season. So that one's actually gone and is just no longer part of our season opportunities. Another, I guess, relatively minor change. I mean, if you're really into muzzleloaders and you're wanting to use a 40 caliber muzzleloader, then this is a big change for you. But the minimum diameter of the muzzleloader barrel was decreased to 40 caliber. And the reason is there were some newer muzzleloaders on the market. Several hunters wanted to see these being used. They contacted us. We looked at it and we said, sure. I mean, there's no reason to not to do that. And so when this package was going through, we included this in there. Another change that occurred, I believe, last year was that the allowance of using infrared sensors on like drones or handheld devices to locate harvested deer. You still can't use these things to hunt, but you can use them to help you locate a deer after it's been harvested. Now, it's important to note that from our DNR public lands, you cannot launch a drone. So you can't stand there, launch the drone as this person is doing if you were standing on a DNR property or operated from a DNR property. So just keep that in mind, that if you are tracking your deer, you can use these infrared sensors. You just can't launch these from any of our public, state public lands. Another relatively minor change is a couple actually of small pieces of I think state forestry land and maybe one of the reservoir properties is in a deer reduction zone. And several hunters pointed out that they couldn't actually place their deer stands in those reduction zones until the season was like well underway. So they asked if they could mirror what you can do on public lands. And so we said, sure, there wasn't any problem with that. And so in this package, we changed it to where if you're hunting in one of those segments of a DNR property that's within a deer reduction zone, you can put your stand up on September 1st and leave it until February 8th. Now, probably the largest change that you've heard and seen is that there has been a change to the centerfire rifle law for deer hunting. Okay, and these right here are the three main aspects of that. First of all, it allows the same calibers to be used on both public and private land. Okay, so prior to this, there were different rules for public land and different rules for private land. Those are gone. Okay, the next change is that the primary requirement for it to be legal is the minimum caliber, the bullet diameter is 5.56 millimeters, which in inches is 0.219 inches. It's still, you have you can't use a full metal jacket for hunting, but the primary thing you want to look at is this minimum caliber to make sure you're legal. And this includes a lot of firearms, so I think most people are going to be well within that range of what can be used. And then hunters can only carry a maximum of 10 cartridges. Prior, this was only on private land. Now it's on both public and private, since there isn't a difference between public and private anymore. Okay, so again, this is a pretty significant change that occurred fairly recently. Now, that's pretty much it for these changes. If you heard something and maybe you don't get your question answered here, you come up with a question later on, and you've got questions about our other regulations, because we do have a lot of them, and some of them can be confusing. We have a dedicated phone number, this 812-334-3795, and we have people who will answer that phone. We don't have very many, so if somebody doesn't answer right away, be sure to leave a message, because we are really good about getting back to folks and returning phone calls. So make sure you leave a message, or you can fire off an email to indeerinfo@dnr.in.gov. This number, this email address is pretty easy to find on our websites. It's in the hunting guide, but if you ever have any questions about hunting regulations, or like what type of license do I need, or maybe you've read something that's not clear, this is a great place to call. There's also a couple of websites down here if you want to try to look up the information for yourself. We've got a frequently asked questions, and then just a general deer page. Now, if you have additional questions, we got quite a few contact numbers here. For instance, if you're checking in your deer or any other game, you've got a problem, and maybe you've made a mistake, you've got your online account that maybe you're having problems with, or maybe you purchased the wrong license and like you look down, you realize you've got the wrong thing. These are good numbers to write down. 317-232-4200 or 877-463-6367, or you can email inhuntfish@dnr.in.gov. Again, these are great ones to kind of have. These are also in the hunting guide. You know, when these come out, make sure you pick one of these up. All these new regulations will be in the new hunting guide. Again, if you make a mistake or have a problem, these are the folks to call. Same thing. There may only be like one person answering the phone at that moment. You get 2 calls, make sure you leave a message. These guys are excellent about returning phone calls, and if they get too many messages, they'll actually bring a few additional people in to help them answer messages. So don't get discouraged if you call and you don't get anybody. Make sure you actually leave a message, and these folks will get back to you. Reserved hunts, you can email DFW reservedhunts@dnr.in.gov, or give them a call at 812-486-9648. If you've got a question about when do the reserved hunts go on, when can you access them and get onto those, or if you're got a question about, well, when did the draws happen, or anything like that. Again, a lot of this information is available on our website, but if you can't find it, you just want to talk to somebody, give these guys, you can shoot them an email or give them a call. Same deal, leave a message if you have to. All of our folks are really good at getting back to folks, all of our Division of Fish and Wildlife folks. This is new and pretty significant. If you don't have online access, you can check in your game now free of charge. So again, a good number to have kind of written down somewhere, 260-368-5880. So if you need to check in game and you don't have any other way of doing it, great place to do it. And then finally, if you hunt migratory birds, I know this is a deer program, but hey, you know, we welcome everybody here. If you're a migratory bird hunter and you need help with HIP, the new number is 260-323-5378. So I think Mariah's going to put this where folks can see it and access it. This we've got a contact us page, on.in.gov/DFW. That stands for Division of Fish and Wildlife, if you're wondering. So /DFW-contact. And all these will be on there. But I'll leave when I'm talking, unless I'm going to a specific slide, I'll leave either this additional contact number up or the deer information line. So yeah, Mariah, that's pretty much it for the presentation. So I don't know if we've got any questions or anything.
We do. Thanks so much, Joe. And thanks so much for going through all of that information about where people can go to get more info after this presentation is over. I did go ahead and pop all of those numbers, or most of those numbers, and the contact us page in the chat. So if folks want to either open a tab with the links that I posted in there, if they are web links, or copy and paste email and phone numbers, you can do that as well, or take a photo of the slides that Joe is kindly leaving us up for us. But in the meantime, I will go ahead and get us started on a few different questions. So Joe, a question that we've gotten a couple different times, is it legal to hunt a doe on public land with a firearm
now? Yes, depending on the public land. Okay, so I'm going to go back here to the slide. We've got a this website here, again, is one you want to make sure you take down. The ones listed here are ones you cannot hunt an antlerless deer or doe with a firearm. These are our fish and wildlife properties, like Pigeon River Fish and Wildlife Property, Atterbury Fish and Wildlife Area, Goose Pond. There's a whole list because there's a lot of like satellite properties, smaller properties associated with these. Make sure you look at this. If you're hunting on forestry land, state forestry land, Morgan Monroe State Forest or Yellowwood State Forest, you can hunt and harvest a doe with a firearm during firearm season at these properties. So DNR has several different property types that you can hunt on. It's a good idea if you're hunting these properties to know what property type you're hunting on, and then just go and double check. We tried to get most of the websites updated so that they say whether or not you can do this, at least on like some of our reservoir properties. I think most of our fish and wildlife properties say you cannot do this. I'm not sure about forestry properties, whether or not they've updated their website. But if you go to this list, look on this, this will tell you all the properties you cannot do it. If it isn't there, you should be good to go ahead and hunt there.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Joe. That was really helpful. A kind of a follow-up to that question. Can you tell us if it's a property that you cannot harvest a doe on with a firearm, does that include a muzzleloader? Are you able to harvest a doe with a muzzleloader on all properties, or is that the same regulation for other firearms?
So you cannot harvest a doe on these properties during firearm season. Okay, so that's the distinction. If you let's say you were hunting during firearm season and you came with a muzzleloader during firearm season, that's considered a firearm. If you go during muzzleloader season, you're fine. So on these properties, and it's very clear on this website, it says with a firearm during firearms season. So with a muzzleloader during muzzleloader season, yep, you can hunt, I believe, all of our properties for antlerless deer during muzzleloader season. It's just you cannot shoot a deer with a firearm during firearm season. Now, if you were hunting archery and you are hunting one of our properties during firearm season, that would be fine. That's why we don't say you just can't harvest a doe during firearm season at all, but it's with a firearm during firearm season, and that includes all the equipment types that are legal during firearm season, which would include high-powered rifles, handguns, muzzle loaders, air rifles, air bows, like all of those different things. Okay, so if you are hunting with a firearms license and hunting with a firearm or a multi-season antlerless license, you could not harvest a doe on those properties. But muzzleloader, later in muzzleloader season, you're fine.
Got it. Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate that. You mentioned a couple different changes with our cartridge and case length size. So can you clarify for me, is there still a maximum case length of 3 inches for rifle cartridges, or has that changed?
Nope, it's gone. This is literally the regulation right here. Like I said, the only thing that's not on here is about the you still have to use or you still can't use the full metal jacket. That wasn't a change, so I didn't think to put it on here. But there is no more case length, just a minimum bullet diameter that you have to be concerned with. So yeah, no more trying to measure your cases and figure out is it legal or not. That's all gone. Basically, if it's got a bullet diameter of 0.219 inches or larger, you're good.
Got it. Thank you so much, Joe. And then we have a question here, kind of similarly related, but you mentioned that you can only carry 10 rounds on your person. Is that on your person or in your weapon, or does that matter?
Either. So for instance, if you had a firearm that had a 5-round magazine, maybe you've got one in the pipe ready to go, you could only have 4 others with you. So 10 total is what you can have with you while you're out there hunting. And it can be in the rifle, or it could be like if you've got a more traditional, let's say you've got a single shot rifle. You've got 1 chambered, and then the other 9 could like be in your vest or your pocket or whatever.
Got it. Thank you so much, Joe. And then
Sure.
Was there any change to pistol or carbine equipment and ammo?
Well, the carbines are just a rifle, so that falls under the rifle law. There was no change to the pistol law. So yeah, so if it's considered a centerfire rifle, it follows this law, but pistols are completely separate, and there was no change to those.
Got it. Thank you. And then I think I know the answer to this, but just to be sure it's coming from the expert, will there still be CWD testing sites available this year during season?
Absolutely. We've got those on our website, and you can go and look at those. I know we're in the process of adding additional sites. We try to do that every year. And all of our fish and wildlife properties, if you're hunting on one of those, I believe most of them have a cooler there where you could drop off a head, but we've got a variety of different areas, different places where you can have your deer tested, and that'll be on our CWD website.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And let's see here. You mentioned checking in game briefly when you were talking about the different ways to contact people, and you mentioned that there was a new way that you could call in to check in game if you don't like to do that online. Can you tell us a little bit about what the rule is for how long you have to check in your harvested deer after you harvested it?
Yeah, you've got 48 hours after you harvest that animal. Okay, if you're a non-resident hunter and let's say that you're getting ready to go back home, you have to check it in before you leave the state. Okay, so that is a little bit of a difference for non-resident hunters. But let's say you live in Indiana, you harvest your deer, you've got 48 hours to check it in.
Excellent. Thanks, Joe. And then we've got another one here that's kind of a hot topic, or has been a hot topic lately. You mentioned that launching a drone from public land is illegal. Can you tell us a little bit about if somebody launches it on private land, are they able to then fly it over public land, or how does that work?
Yes, if you're launching it from private land and flying it over a fish and wildlife area, that's legal, assuming that you are following all the FAA regulations. You know, different size drones have different regulations. I think if they're small enough, they fall under a certain category, and other size drones. So as long as you're following all of those, and you know, if you've got your part, I think it's 137 license, and you're following all that, yes, you would be good launching it from, let's say, a neighbor's property, gives you permission, and you launch from their property and use it to help find your deer. That's perfectly legal.
Got it. And then just to clarify that people could not land the drone or taxi or anything like that from public land or from public land.
That's right. We also ask, because this isn't my area of expertise, this is more related to public lands, and so we asked those folks for clarification. You also cannot be operating the drone from public land, so you couldn't like fly the drone overhead and be walking around with like your controller looking for the deer. It has to be operated from not only launch but also operated from off-site.
Got it. Thank you so much, Joe. That's really helpful.
Sure.
We've got a couple of different questions about another specific ammunition type. So I'm just going to throw that out here, and hopefully I say it correctly. Ammo types are certainly not my forte. But would it now be legal to hunt deer with an AR-15 chambered in 5.56?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
the equipment type doesn't matter. Okay, so an AR-15 platform, a single shot rifle, another type of like automatic rifle, like the more sporting types, none of that matters. What you've got to do is just make sure that bullet diameter is correct.
Got it. Thank you so much. Okay, and then this has come up a couple of different times as well. On private property, can folks still carry their sidearm without any bullet limits for personal protection and coyotes? What does that look like?
Yeah, we don't regulate personal protection weapons, so it's just whatever the law is on that. And I don't think, I mean, there's no limit to, you know, what you can carry for personal protection.
Okay, got it. Okay, we've got another question here about multi-season antlerless licenses. So we know that that is a new license type this year, kind of taking the place of a previous license type. Can you use a multi-season antlerless license on DNR properties during archery season? Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yep. So that's different from when it was a bonus license. In the past, you couldn't use the bonus license at all on our fish and wildlife properties. The multi-season antlerless license, those are fine, partly because we got rid of the bag limits for archery. So like, let's say somebody was on a fish and wildlife property, they could use more than just 2 archery licenses now. So, you know, it's the same thing. You can use the multi-season antlerless license on fish and wildlife properties. You just can't use it with a firearm during firearm season. That's the biggest limitation, is you're just still not able to harvest that doe on a fish and wildlife property with a firearm during firearm season. But yes, you can use it during archery season, the multi-season antlerless license, and then you can switch over and use it during muzzleloader season if you would like.
Excellent. That sounds handy. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so if a hunter checks in the deer from their deer stand, do they still have to have a transport tag for that animal?
Good question. I don't think so, because at that point you've got your confirmation number, and you've got that with your deer. However, that one I would have to actually look at the hunting regulations to know for certain. So, Alexandra, if you've got a second and want to try to look that one up, if we have that capability, I just don't remember off the top of my head what that is, or if you're supposed to write the confirmation number on there. I apologize for not knowing that one.
That's okay, Joe. I appreciate you answering that. And Sam, if you're on here, we will try to get that answer to you within this presentation. And if not, we invite you to go ahead and reach out to us through that deer info line we talked about earlier, either via email or phone, and we can get that info to you at a later date. Okay. Let's see here. Someone is wanting to know if it's been considered to have a primitive muzzle loading only season, or a weekend in October with no flintlock cap.
Occasionally there is discussion about new seasons, and I know there's been some discussion about just a primitive season. So not necessarily just muzzleloader, but maybe like more primitive bows and stuff like that. Nothing's ever really happened with that. What I do as a state deer biologist is I ask those questions of hunters, because my opinion is just one opinion. So what I like to do is ask this in our deer management survey. And so if you don't know, at the end of every deer season, around the 31st of January, we send out a survey to everybody we've got contact information for. If you're a hunter, if you bought a license, and this is where we ask those types of questions. Just like you want to know if we could have this type of season. Actually make myself a note. I mean, this is something we can ask. Hold on a second. Primitive muzzle season. But what we do is we put questions like this on our deer survey and ask y'all what y'all think. Because if a pretty big segment of the hunting public would like to see something like this, and I think you said maybe in like October sometime, then sure, why not have one? I mean, that's where a lot of these deer regulation changes came from, is we listened to input from hunters. And actually, once we had a big list of potential changes, we went back and asked hunters on this annual survey, and y'all's input went into these changes. There were actually more changes that were suggested, but a lot of hunters didn't like them. So like, for instance, we looked at, I think, shortening the time from 48 hours down to 24 hours for checking in a deer. And only 37% of hunters or something like that thought that was a good idea. So we scrapped that one. And so things like this, new seasons, moving seasons around. Occasionally folks will ask us, well, can you move the firearm season to a different date? We actually asked that like a few years ago, and the vast majority of people, well, not vast, like a little over 50% wanted it left alone, and then the other half didn't agree on where it should be. And so that was telling me that we probably got it in the right place. And so for questions like that, we typically try to put that back to y'all. And so that's why looking for and answering those that survey that we send out every year is so important, because that's where each hunter gets to tell us what they think on like these sorts of questions.
Absolutely. Good way to hear from people who are out there in the field and to collect all those voices in one place. Remind us again how people receive those surveys if they'd like to participate after season.
You buy a license or you check in a deer. And if we've got that information from y'all and it's correct, so this is kind of the important thing, is sometimes we get bad email addresses and so forth. We send it out via email. Okay, it's an electronic survey, and so it's automatic. And so what you want to do is watch for an email that talks about the deer management survey right around the 1st of February. If you want to make 100% certain that you get it, we do have an online form where you can go and put in your contact information where you want it emailed to, and go ahead and get on that list. And I don't know, maybe one of our guys can actually do a quick search for deer management survey and actually find that email link to do that. But yeah, if you're buying a hunting license or you're harvesting and checking in a deer, we usually go back at least 5 years to folks in case maybe you didn't harvest a deer. But if we've got good contact information for you, we send you that.
Just to make sure I'm looking at.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Just to make sure I'm looking at the right thing, Joe. This is the deer management survey, right?
That is the deer management survey.
All right, I found that. I will go ahead and make sure there's a link for it in the announcement or chat section so folks can check that out.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll mention is, we do send it out around the 1st of February. I know a lot of people get a lot of spam email and that kind of stuff around that time, but if you want to make sure you get this, really look for that email talking about the annual deer survey, deer management survey about that time.
Great, thank you so much, Joe. We've got another question here that I think could be widely applicable, but this question specifically focused on Wells County. So if there's a limited 2 deer in Wells County, can you only shoot 2 doe or a buck and a doe in that county? Is that how that works?
That is the antlerless limit. So if Wells is 2, you can shoot 2 antlerless deer, but you can also shoot your buck. So the total number you could shoot in Wells would be 3. Okay, so that number that you're seeing is just the antlerless limit, the antlerless bag limit.
Got it. Thank you so much. And I'll make sure there's a link in the chat for that county bag limit map as well, so people can check out what their limit is for the county they're in. Can you tell us a little bit, like, is it legal for a hunter to quarter a deer to ease the pack out after you've checked in the deer, or is that not legal?
After you've checked it in and you have your confirmation number, at that time you can do that. Before it's checked in, you cannot do that. That would be illegal. But like the person who asked the question earlier, if you've got it, if you go ahead and check it in sitting in your stand, that person could then come down. They've got it checked in. They've got their confirmation number, and we also email that to you. And you've got that. At that point, you can quarter that deer. But before that, you have to leave it.
Got it. Thank you so much. Can you talk to us a little bit about herd management throughout Indiana? Someone's asking how herds can be managed better in different counties in Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, so Indiana is mostly private land. Okay, so I think we're like 96% private land. So most herd management occurs on private land. Deer respond to deer habitat. That first little blurb that we talked about before. I mean, that's really how like people on our fish and wildlife properties manage deer. It's how they manage it on like federal properties and so forth, is they manipulate the habitat. So for instance, if you are in an area that is in our corn belt, a lot of times what is limiting deer populations there is the lack of cover. And so that might be trees, bushes, those sorts of things. If that is available, then we typically have more deer. We can, like when we've done our population estimates, we see, high numbers of deer in that cover. And then once you get out into corn, especially the further out in the field you see fewer and fewer deer. And so if you live in those areas, having more cover for deer is very useful. In southern Indiana, where we have lots of cover, it might be, taking down some of the cover so deer have more food. Okay. And so, what we're doing as a state is making sure we've got a population that is existing through time. Okay. And, we can, like if we see a population that is going down that's related to hunting, like for instance, in Franklin County a few years ago, we had a severe EHD outbreak. We went out and we measured the population, saw that it was down significantly and lowered the quotas. And so now we're just starting to ease those back up. So if we see something related to disease and in the harvest is going to be additional mortality on top of that, that's when we go through and work on those numbers. In a lot of places, we're harvesting well below what we could be harvesting. And so in those cases, to actually have more deer, we need more deer habitat. But that's in the hand of private landowners. And if private landowners want, are interested in managing for something else, that a lot of times these populations around us fluctuate because of, how people are managing their private land. And of course, that's completely within their rights to do so. And so, again, DNR is making sure we've got this population throughout time. But if you're somewhere and you're wanting to see significantly more deer in an area, a lot of times it's because there needs to be some habitat manipulation to really get that.
That makes sense. Thanks for that thorough answer, Joe. That was really helpful to understand how our habitat efforts really impact wildlife populations that we're seeing. Okay, so we've got another one here about hunting specifically on fish and wildlife properties. Is a buck allowed to be taken with a firearm during firearm season on a fish and wildlife property? They know that you cannot take a buck. They know that does cannot be taken, but is a buck allowed to be taken?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a common thing on fish and wildlife areas during that, especially that opening weekend of firearm season. So yes, you can do that.
Excellent, thank you. We have another question here about an out-of-state hunter. So if someone's grandson is coming up from Virginia to hunt deer with an Indiana resident, does that person need a hunter safety permit from Indiana, or can they use the Virginia hunter safety? So I think this is about hunters education here in Indiana, and I'm not sure if that's a question for law enforcement or if we have the answer for that.
I believe we honor hunter education from all states. So mine is originally from Georgia when I was a kid growing up hunting. I think technically I don't need it here in Indiana and Georgia and other places I've lived. I have, but it would be honored here. But again, that's something I would double check. That's not an answer that I would know off the top of my head. So that's something that we probably want to follow back up with you, or if you want to email that question or call that in to the Deer Info line, that's a great question. And then that's the nice thing about this, the info line is, a lot of times there are so many things to know. We can't know all of this off the top of our head, but we can look up the answer for you fairly easy. So, but yeah, that's one that we would want to double check, but I'm pretty certain that it can honor it when you're coming from a different state.
Excellent, thank you. So Roger, go ahead and email or call that Deer Info line and we will get a for sure answer for you. We have another question here about checking in game. Do you have to check in a doe as a bonus tag during firearm season on a deer bundle? So I'm thinking they're talking about the multi-season license that replaced the old bundle license. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so what you're remembering is kind of that old system where you had to designate it as a bonus deer. You no longer have to do that. You just check it in as an antlerless deer. So that was one of the things by getting rid of that system, and the bonus antlerless license made it simpler. Now we've got that single number, that single bag limit for each county, and you're just checking in an antlerless deer for that county, and it counts against that number in that county. No more trying to figure out if you want to check it in as a deer against an archery license or a deer against a bonus tag or anything like that. You just check it in. You still need to tell them what license you were using when you harvested that deer. And in this case, you would put multi-season antlerless license, and then it was a doe and the county and whatever else information you need, and you're good.
Awesome, thank you. And then I'm not sure that this changed, but I just want to be sure I'm understanding correctly. This person asks, will the DNR allow depredation permits for overpopulation for farmers and landowners?
Yes. So if you go to, I don't know the website, but we've got a website that explains depredation permits. It's when farmers have had a certain amount of damage. So it's not based on deer overpopulation. It's based on the amount of damage that that individual has had to crops, landscaping, whatever it is. And then our district biologist and our permit team take that information and decide like what to issue, how many to issue, and so forth. But yes, that program is still in existence. really to try to target areas that have a specific problem rather than having such high bag limits or high quotas like we had in the past. And for those of you who don't know, we used to have really high bag limits. We've been able to bring some of those down primarily because we use this more targeted approach of using the depredation permits, the deer reduction zones, and things like that. That's really helped.
Awesome. That definitely makes more sense. Thank you. I'm seeing several questions in here about various calibers or types of ammunition. Can you go over one more time how people determine whether their caliber or their ammunition type is legal or not for deer hunting?
Yep. So let's say you've got something like a 219B, BEE, like like a bumblebee, and you're trying to figure out, is it legal? A lot of times I'll look on the ammunition box. I might go to the manufacturer's website, Wikipedia, something like this, and you're looking for bullet diameter. You look at the bullet diameter. In that case, it's 0.219 inches. You know you're good. That simple. No more measuring case length or anything like that. You can also take a pair of calipers and actually put it on the bullet. Make sure you're measuring it at the widest point. But really, if you just go to that manufacturer's website, your ammunition box, a lot of times it will have that caliber or bullet diameter on there, and you're just making sure that it's larger or equal to that 0.219 inches or 5.56 millimeters.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Joe. Let's see here. So I know that the audience is actually watching us at a lag, so I think we're pretty well caught up with questions, but I'm going to give it just a second here to see if more roll in. In the meantime, I just want to remind everybody that the recording of this presentation and all of the good information that Joe has shared with us will be put on the DNR YouTube channel within the next couple of weeks. So that'll be available for people to reference if they have forgotten something that was covered here or want to go back and look at a reference that was shared. It will take a couple of weeks for that to be posted to the DNR YouTube channel, but people can find that online, and that should be helpful. Okay. We do have another question here now about quotas. So is the number of deer for a specific county the total number allowed for the entire season?
Yes. So when you look at that county antlerless bag limit, that's for the entire season. So for instance, if you're hunting down in Brown County and it's a 4, you might harvest, let's say, 2 with archery equipment, 1 with firearm. If you've got a multi-season antlerless license and maybe shoot 1 in muzzleloader, that's the total you can harvest for that season.
Okay. And that would be plus a buck for that county, right?
And your buck. Yeah, that's right. That's, you know, you can, yeah, this is just the antlerless limit. Your buck is on top of that.
Excellent. Thank you. And yeah, just to note, we're seeing a couple of things in the chat. So just to note that the calibers that are allowed are center fire, not like rim fire. So that's correct, right, Joe?
That's right. Center fire rifles, no rim fire.
Excellent. All right, bear with me here as I go back through to make sure I'm not missing anything. I do have a question in here about turkey season, so I will just ask that poster, if they're still listening in, reach out to our turkey biologist. That information can be found on our website. Are there any changes to reduction areas like bag limits, earn a buck, anything like that? Can you talk to us a little bit about reduction zones?
Yeah, the only change to the reduction zone this year is a temporary change. Porter County, the northern part of Porter County, where most of the deer reduction zone was located or is located, had a severe EHD event last year. And so we suspended the deer reduction zone in Porter County Everything else is the same. Our website is updated on that. The maps are updated. So if you like are wanting to check on that, you can go ahead and check on the area where you normally hunt. But if you normally hunt an area that's had a reduction zone, that hasn't changed unless it's the area within Porter County. And again, that should just be a 1-year change.
Excellent, thank you. And just in case anybody's not familiar, EHD that Joe mentioned is a disease that affects whitetail deer, causing, a little bit of impact on their population, which is just some context there. Correct, Joe? Is that right?
That's correct. Some people may have heard of it as blue tongue, epizootic hemorrhagic disease. We have it pretty much every year to varying degrees. A lot of years it doesn't really cause any problem. We just know it's around. Last year, we had a lot of it in a concentrated area, actually mostly concentrated around the urban area around Valparaiso. Also a few other areas around Indiana, but that was probably the worst place. And so anytime that we have an EHD event, we look at it, see how severe it is, see if we need to make any changes to regulations. We actually lowered the quotas temporarily in a few of those counties where we had this EHD event, and Porter County was one where we also took out the deer reduction zone.
Great, thank you for that clarification. We've got a couple of questions in here about the hunting and trapping guide. So just as a reminder to everybody, our new hunting and trapping regulations guide will be available online at DNR properties and at licensed retailers sometime in late July or early August. So keep your eyes peeled for that. That will contain all of this the new deer regulations that we've talked about today. For the multi-season tag, Joe, are you only allowed the buck and 2 doe, and then you have to move on with bonus in another county, or can you harvest 3 doe on a multi-season tag?
Do you mean the bonus?
Yes, sorry.
That's fine. Yeah, so the bonus license, let's just get back here, is a buck and 2 does. So once you've harvested your 2 does, if you want to harvest another doe or another antlerless deer, you would need like the multi-season antlerless license or archery license if you're using an archery tag or whatever. And then your buck license would still be active on that bundle, but you cannot harvest 3 does or 3 antlerless deer on the bundle license any longer.
Got it. Thank you. That makes sense. Is there a specific barrel length that rifles have to adhere to be able to be used for hunting?
No. So ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearm, have limits to what they consider a rifle. They also have a limit for what they consider a short barrel rifle. Okay. Either one of those could be used with our centerfire rifle law. It's just you have to know, like if you possess one of these short-barreled rifles, I believe you had to have a permit for it. If you have one, I'm sure you know, but otherwise, if it's considered a rifle by ATF, you went into the store and you purchased it as a rifle. It's got, I don't remember exactly what it is, if it's 16 or 18 inches. I think it's 16 inches. Again, we can help clarify that for you with the deer info line. But, however you purchased it, if it was a rifle or a short-barreled rifle, you could use either one of those with the new centerfire rifle law.
Great, thank you. And I think we have time for just one last question here. And then before we will wrap up and just remind people of some resources, will the new rifle changes apply to draw hunts like the state park reduction hunts?
I believe so. I don't know why they wouldn't. I'm not associated with like the state park hunts or any of that, but this is for public and private land. So, previously our public land regulations apply to all of those. Now, some parks may have, I don't know if they do this or not, but if they don't allow firearms at all, like if it's an archery hunt or something like that, of course, you're still going to have to comply with that. And they could have different regulations. I know, for instance, our military bases, you can't use handguns there, even though that's a legal firearm. So if there's any differences to that, like some public lands, simply because of where they're located, they might be shotgun only or something like that. But that's something you're going to want to check with the folks that you're in that draw from. I apologize. That's not a lot. That's just not something I have a lot of contact with or to do with like the state parks.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense, Joe. I think it's always a good practice to kind of reach out to the property that you're hunting on, if it is, public property, and you have specific questions related to that property that may differ. So good guidance there. And with that, we are unfortunately out of time for the evening. So I just wanted to, again, thank everybody who joined us tonight. Thank you so much, Joe, for your time and expertise being on this call. We really appreciate all of the information that you've brought to the table today. And I know that I've learned a lot. I hope everybody else who is on the call has learned a lot as well. Every time I talk to you, I learn more things about deer hunting regulations in the state. So I appreciate that. For everybody who joined us from the audience, thanks so much for that as well. I appreciate you taking the time to learn with us today. Hopefully we have answered a bunch of questions that people had, but if you have additional questions that we did not get to today, please feel free to reach out to that deer info line. We posted the information in the chat and it was on the screen earlier, or go to that on.in.gov/deer-quota. And at that site, you'll be able to see all of the different resources you can go to get your questions answered about deer hunting. So thanks so much for your time tonight, and happy hunting to everybody who's going to be taken to the field this fall. Have a good evening.